Welcome. It is WSA TV, and today we are talking about what does the empowered woman look like? Anita Russell is a global business connector. She's based out of Pittsburgh, and she's passionate about cultivating change and empowering personal transformation. And to know her is to know that about her. She's passionate, and today we're going to talk about this with her, about empowering. What does an empowered woman look like? And welcome, Anita. And first, tell us a little bit about you.
So first of all, thank you, Laura, for having me on as your guest. It's always great to be on WSA TV. So just to give a little bit of background of who I am the founder and CEO of the place to Soar. And I designed my business as a social enterprise that is dedicated to cultivating change through daily growth and personal transformation. I'm also a professional speaker and definitely a member of WSA, a Voices author. I'm also the producer of Inflection Point podcast, and that is one of the tools of my anti-racism activation body of work. And so women empowerment aligns completely with my anti-racism activation work. And so I'll give you a little bit of what I mean by all of that. So I define anti-racism as a sustainable grassroots movement of humanity that is tied to three specific principles: influence, leadership, and equity. And so part of what I do is highlight the work of myself along with other individuals, entrepreneurs, businesses, organizations, etc., whose anti-racism activation work contributes to empowering social health and economic equity. And embedded in all of that, embedded in all of the work that I do, whether I'm connecting with whoever it is I'm connecting with, is this idea of women's empowerment. So that's how I kind of connect the larger body of work that I do directly to women empowerment and gender equity.
Wonderful. It's a lot to take on, right? And let's go back to that women and what does an empowered woman look like, and why is women's empowerment so imperative in today's society? Why have you woven that in?
Well, I wove it in because number one, I'm a woman. And so that kind of shows up automatically. And because the type of work that I'm involved in has to do with growth and personal transformation, cultivating change, and all of that, those things in and of themselves are about empowerment. And I do a lot of work. Like one of the things that I learned about myself when I first started my business, when you kind of go through that process of figuring out what is your niche, who is that group of people. And I always came back to women. Just in general, I've always come back to women. And so I look at my work as being operating in that space of women empowerment, and I also find that incredibly important when you think about where we are today from multiple perspectives. We got all kinds of issues that are going on, lots of things that were revealed under the pandemic, and just different things like that are so many things that have to be tackled with by society. And I can't do it all. So I narrowed all of my work down to women empowerment and doing that through the anti-racism activation work. But I want to share with you an example of an organization that I totally admire for the work that they do from that women empowerment perspective. So it's an organization, a nonprofit global organization called Women Lift Health, and they operate in the healthcare sector. And they have these global cohorts in East Africa and India and North America. Their whole entire thing is encapsulated in transforming the face of health leadership with diverse, accomplished leaders, women specifically, collectively improving health outcomes. So it's this incredible organization that embodies the three principles that I mentioned earlier: the influence, the leadership, and the equity. So I'm going to read you a quick quote of how they describe their work. Women Lift Health is committed to expanding the power and influence of talented women in global health and catalyzing systemic change to achieve gender equity and equality in leadership. So again, those fundamental principles are kind of coming together. And so their why of what it is that they do really resonates with me from that perspective of empowering women. They talk about building communities and influencing environments where people live and where they work. They talk about catalyzing transformative change at the individual level, the social level, and the institutional level. And that need for transformational change is why empowering women is so important to me personally.
And I've always heard, and see, tell me if this resonates or if I'm off base here, but that when you educate women in a community, when you kind of empower them with knowledge and give them equal opportunities, you elevate the whole community.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I'm so glad you said that, because when you think about how women in general function, so I'm not trying to think about it monolithically or anything like that, but just in general, we are the nurturers. We're the ones who care for families. We care for our children. We're the ones who often have that presence in the community, whether it's through our church or it's through our children's school. So we always bring that nurturing aspect into just about everything that we do. It's just who we are by nature. And so being that on that that side of that side of humanity, I want to say, that is really focused on building those relationships, having those connections, caring about one another. And if we can remove some of the barriers that women experience, economic barriers, decision-making barriers, and health barriers, and all of those types of things, we can contribute, I think, to creating a much more pleasurable and desirable kind of world. That's what I see.
Yeah. And so you may have already answered this, but, you know, everybody benefits from women's empowerment, but is there anyone in specific, you know, you want to bring shine a light on, like, who benefits from women's empowerment?
Right. So if you look at it from the standpoint of economics, as an example, so we know that women in particular generally make less money than their counterparts, their male counterparts, right? But at the same time, there's this recognition that women are also, for example, the ones who are responsible for childcare, making sure that childcare, and everybody knows that childcare is expensive, right? And so depending on what your situation is, again, when I think about some of the things that were revealed under COVID-19 and the pandemic and everything, we really got a chance to see the suffering that some people experience in their daily lives. And part of that is linked to economic issues, right? And so if we could at least level the playing field where dollar for dollar, doesn't matter what your gender is, you're doing the same job, you're doing the same type of work, that disparity is not there. And so just from that economic perspective, we can begin to lift women up, begin to lift up children, and begin to lift up communities, even if that was the one thing that we did. But there are so many other things when you think about violence against women, when you think about the different types of trauma that women can experience. If you just imagine what the world would look like if we didn't go through half of that stuff that we go through.
Yeah. I mean, you just mentioned that violence thing, and it triggered, like, gosh, if that was eradicated, we'd have families that were in harmony. We'd have kids that are growing up with good self-esteem. We'd have less crime. We'd have less suicide. We'd have less drug problems, you know, because you've given the family a chance. And the way you do give that family a chance is you treat the women equally, fairly, and you keep them safe, right?
Absolutely. That keeping them safe part is such a huge part of it. Especially like, we know what we deal with in the United States, but then when you look outside of the United States and, you think of like child brides as an example, kids getting married when they're like 12 and things like that. So when you have those types of things in a culture, women lose out. They start losing out at very early ages. Can you imagine being 12 years old and you have a husband and then you're having a child when you're 13 or 14 years old? Like, you did not have a chance to live your life.
Yeah.
And we come into this world with gifts and talents and something, our purpose to give to the world, but often that gets snuffed out because we have these social issues that we have to deal with, because we have these economic issues that we have to deal with. So again, I challenge people to think, could the world look like if women didn't suffer half of the stuff that they do suffer?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. The world would be a completely different place. A lot of healing would be available for everyone,
Absolutely.
for families, for our future. So it's like, so the women is kind of a pivot point for shifting things. If we give them the respect, the safety, the empowerment. And let's talk about, how does women's empowerment contribute to gender equity? And I don't know if we've already been talking all around that, but maybe define that and talk about women's empowerment specifically.
Yeah, so I had gotten some information because I am constantly reading. I'm like a researcher by training, so I'm always reading articles and things of that nature. And I stumbled upon an article from the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations. And they talk about gender equality and women's empowerment. And so I'm going to talk to you about how they frame these concepts up and how they end up all linking together, right? And so starting off with gender equality, they define it as ensuring that men and women enjoy their rights. They both have the opportunity to enjoy the rights that are available to both, whether you're a male or a female, and have the same opportunities, the same entitlements in the social, economic, and political spaces. And so those three spaces get back to what I was talking about earlier with the influence and those types of things, the influence, the leadership, and equity, obviously. But then they also look at and define gender equality, because gender equality and gender equity are not the same thing. And I think oftentimes people use those words interchangeably, but they don't mean exactly the same thing.
So were you just defining equity, gender equity?
I was defining equality.
Equality.
Yeah.
Okay, great. That was equality. Now
that was equality.
Okay.
And now gender equity can be achieved through gender. I'm sorry, I said that backwards. It's the other way around. Gender equality can be achieved through gender equity, right? By addressing women's specific needs. So for example, of the two genders, male, female, who gives birth to children? The women give birth to children. But then when you look at maternal health care, when you look at some of the issues, even with Black women, when it comes to our health care, and our healthcare is greatly compromised, we have these incredible infant mortality issues in the United States. That's a major issue. But you can't look at that from the standpoint necessarily of strictly equality, because the fact that we give birth to children means we have a completely different slate of needs than what men do. And so that equity space means I'm going to meet you where you are and understanding what your specific needs are, and make sure that we're doing things that are going to help meet those specific needs. You need maternal health care, we're going to make sure you have maternal health care. And when you think about it through that lens, also bringing healthy children into the world, that does help the community, right? That helps socially, and all of these spaces that we're talking about, healthy children are part of that benefit of equity, when it's
Exactly.
combined with equality. You know what I mean? And so women's empowerment is that process of supporting that advancement in equality and that advancement in equity. And it's given women power and agency to expand their ability to control their own lives in an equitable environment. So that when you look at all of those pieces together, that's what we're talking about, is creating this equitable environment that everybody benefits from.
It's amazing that we don't get it as a society. It's like, it makes so much sense when you say it. It makes so much sense that we do it, but there's so many blocks to it. And it's a lot of cultural
Yes.
programming that we've had and we've grown up with, or I've grown up with for sure. And that to take off the lens and say, wait a minute, it's not equitable. It's not, we're not equal.
Mhm.
It's hurting everyone. Let's do
Exactly.
something about it. So what, I'm going to just finish with, what does the empowered woman look like? How would you answer that question?
So I do a lot also around the topic of mindsets, right? So there's this fixed mindset, which kind of like that zero sum, somebody has to win for somebody to lose, that fixed mindset. Then there's a growth mindset. And when you're in a growth mindset, that's when you kind of begin to realize that you can change, you can grow, you can learn, you can develop, right? And lead yourself into something totally different. And so that's where the personal transformation comes in. But there's a third mindset, right? And I think this third mindset relates directly to women empowerment. And that third mindset is a benefit mindset. And so there's a website, and the website is benefitmindset.com. And they give a very in-depth description of what a benefit mindset is. But first and foremost, it builds on the growth mindset. So it's recognizing that our abilities, our potential, our gifts, and all of that can be developed. And so what I mentioned earlier about these little girls that are coming into the world, and they come into the world packaged with stuff that, you know, gifts and talents and creative stuff and all of that. And we snuff that out. But it's recognizing that the development of those gifts and those talents and that nurturing and all of that is what we need to move ourselves towards a more caring and inclusive and interdependent kind of world. And it becomes a lifelong process. So I'm not talking about learning like I finished high school, so now I'm done. I'm talking about that lifelong learning, that lifelong development, that lifelong empowerment, because the deeper and deeper that we can dig within ourselves, that means there's more that we have to offer out into the world. And we can realize our own unique potential that serves the well-being of all. And that is the premise of a benefit mindset, that you're not looking at just in terms of how you as an individual can benefit, but how can my growth, my development, my personal transformation, and all of those things, my influence, my leadership, make the world better for everybody. And it is possible. By empowering women, we essentially become partners in striving for the well-being of all. That's how I bring it all together. It's that benefit mindset that brings it all together.
One of the things I love about what you're saying is that that's what we do here at Women Speakers Association. And
Yes.
one of the things you do with us here, in fact, you have a networking meeting coming up where you're bringing women together to showcase their talents to each other's, support each other in areas that they can support with each other's talents and make the world a better place, one connection at a time, right?
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I absolutely love about Women Speakers Association, because all of this stuff that I just said, it gets embodied in Women Speakers Association. And so that helps me, because it helps me build out my mission and my purpose in the world. It helps me to connect with other women. It helps me to encourage women on their own journeys of personal transformation. And so the global virtual networking event that I will be doing, we will be talking about women empowerment, but digging into it a little bit deeper in terms of the women who are attending actually looking at themselves.
Ooh, that sounds deep. I like this. So not only are we going to network, but we're going to go find out more of what we can bring out and share with other people.
Absolutely.
So that networking event, I believe, is on June 28th, correct?
Yes, and it's at 2 p.m. Eastern time, and I will be the host of the show, but of the networking event. And I just encourage you, especially a woman who is out there questioning herself or just feeling in a place of, I'm not sure what I'm doing. I'm not sure what direction I'm going to go in. Having these empowerment conversations will definitely be beneficial to that type of individual.
I love that. I love that you're going to do empowerment conversations. And
Yes,
so if
yes.
anybody's wondering, how do you join the networking meeting that you're having? Okay, if you're a premier member, it's included with your membership. And if you're not, you can still join for a nominal fee, and you can go to wsalive.com/events. You can see all of our events there. But if you scroll over to June 28th, you can reserve your spot, and we welcome you here to, actually talk to Anita, connect with our members, share your wisdom, and explore what it means to be an empowered woman, right? It's like, it's going to be juicy. You always put on the best events, Anita, and offer so much wisdom. So I want to invite everyone to do that. And if you're just checking out Women Speakers Association and want to know what Premier Membership is all about, including the network, just go to joinwsa.com and you can learn more there. So Anita, thank you. Any parting words you want to leave our viewers with today?
Yeah, I just had a thought that popped into my mind that women empowerment is really about your voice being heard, which is one of the things that Women Speakers Association stands on, this platform of women's voices being heard.
Yeah. And like you said, you're a part of the Last Voices of the 21st Century book. And what I love about it is women are the ones. And these are all transformational example stories in here. And they're not examples, they're real life stories of women, 45 women who are transforming themselves, who have been transformed by the support of other women and people in their life, and who are supporting other transformation. It's a transformational read in and of itself. So thank you for being one of our authors. Thank you for taking the time and sharing your wisdom and exploring what does the empowered woman look like. And if that's you, viewer, please join us on the networking. We want to know you.
And even if you're not sure if it's you, join us anyway and find out.
Awesome. Great point. Thank you, Anita. We'll be back next time with another WSA TV Women's Premiere Show. Bye for now.